So maybe just to start with the questions, we'll start with the shippers. Maybe Rick, if you want to start, if you could talk about some of the biggest factors that you have really in choosing either a mode or a carrier. And we obviously know that price is going to be a factor that you're going to consider, but maybe aside from price, some of the things that you think about in carrier and mode selection.
Okay, certainly price is important, but there's actually other factors that are more important. Using our optimization system for our inbound, our primary concern is service and the pickup window. So we have to find the right carrier that can hit the pickup window of our vendors. So our vendors tell us, we want this freight picked up on this day, and here's our operating hours. So we have to find a carrier that will meet those service requirements. Second thing is from a mode standpoint, we're looking at multi-picks. For a lot of our pickups, again, we're optimizing. We get two pickups going to a destination facility, and there's the over-the-road carriers tend not to want to do multi-picks anymore. So, and this has kind of changed over my career, my long career, as you can tell, but it's changed where over-the-road used to do the multi-picks and intermodal would not. Today, it's the opposite. Intermodal carriers will do multi-picks because they have the local dray drivers that are going to be home at night anyway, so they do the multi-picks, take it to the rail ramp, and off it goes. So that's some of our decision or other criteria that we use.
Carol, is there anything that you'd add to that?
Yes, we have found that with talking about the cost, we have gone to a bid board, this Mercury Gate bid board, because we had, like you said, a lot of carriers who did not want to make multi-stops. And it's what we have done with the bid board is we put the information out there so they know exactly where everything has to pick up, when it has to pick up and everything. And that has been very successful with us, for us, to be able to have that ability to see. So we know who doesn't want those loads and we don't give it to them anymore. And we've been very successful with that.
How long have you been using that?
A little bit longer than a year.
Okay.
And we've been able to save quite a bit of money by doing that also.
Monica, kind of moving beyond, just carrier mode selection. When you think about, a TMS offering, what can a TMS system do to help reduce costs, take out empty miles out of the supply chain?
Yeah, so a lot of rate, carrier, and mode selection is kind of the fundamental. We kind of call it the algebra, and then doing, what we just talked about here is sort of the geometry. You start getting into trig and calculus, though, when you start to do more complex route optimization. And this is dependent upon the density, your networks, the different things. We see a lot of folks actually combining inbound and outbound into optimization. Certainly doing stuff across locations, having visibility across your entire network and your locations. So what it does is at that next level of optimization as far as truly beating the actual direct rate type of cost factor. So what you're doing is you're creating a much better routing, and that's another secondary way of saving a lot of money. So there's basically different levels at which you can save money in transportation. And the more the trucks are certainly full as they're going down the road, or certainly containers and everything else, it's better for all of us.
Jett, is there anything you'd add on kind of the, sorry, didn't mean to grab you. Anything you'd add kind of on the technology front as you think about carrier mode selection and things that technology can enable on that side?
I think when you're looking at the technology, Monica brought up some great points, and so did everyone here up on the panel. It's important just to think about the technology roadmap and how you're going to communicate with the carriers and the trucking companies out there. When you're looking at the information that you're exchanging with these carriers, the majority of the companies out there are kind of using this legacy type of technology, but then we see these the winners, the companies out there like Amazon that are really pushing forward, they've embraced a more modern technology that allows for this automation and visibility. And that automation allows for that carrier, that multi-carrier selection to really help out.
And when you say the technology, is that something that's in place at the shippers, or is that something that outside service provider can offer?
It's a good question. It's a little bit of both. So the shippers need to tap into that technology, and then the carriers need to be able to support the technology. But what we see out there is a massive adoption rate by the carriers of using the more modern technology. Modern technology like the automation and the APIs. What's happened is the legacy tech like EDI and the rate bureaus really increase the cost of the carriers that do business, and it also increases the cost of the shippers out there. So by using this automation technology, this API technology, it lowers the carrier's cost, hence can also lower the shipper's cost.
Okay. Carol, I mean, just thinking about the amount of data that's available to you in the decision process, what's some of the main performance metrics that you end up focusing on that you use to make your decisions? As your either inventory management, carrier selection, those sorts of things. What are some of the main data points that your organization's focused on?
Now we do have to focus on because we have a lot of tennis shoes, and we have to focus on the launch products that come into our distribution center and make sure they get it out so we can expedite them to the store. So that's our primary. We focus a lot on making sure that definitely that our trailers are cubed out.
Okay.
And we do data from the year before, and we can compare to what it is that we have now and do a cost per carton to see how much we're saving or if we're spending more than we were last year, and what it is that affects it, whether it's fuel, whether it's the cost of the carrier, whatever it may be. So
Okay.
we do that on a weekly basis to keep up, to make sure we save all the money we can.
Rick, what about yourself?
Yeah, certainly cost per carton and cost per cubic foot. We measure those constantly. But some other things we do, we measure our end-to-end cycle time weekly. Every carton that moves through our network, we know when it was picked up and we know when it was delivered to the store. So we spend a lot of time focusing on optimizing that. And when I say optimizing, we're not always trying to move it the fastest. Sometimes we'll, knowing when a purchase order has to be delivered in store, if we have, a window, we'll use intermodal instead of over the road. At the same time, if we have a hot purchase order, we'll use over the road and expedite things. We have processes for expediting things through our distribution centers. So it's the data coming out of our purchase order system that is helping to drive some of those decision points. So that's just a flavor for some of the things we're doing.
Jett, it sounds like that the shippers are looking at performance metrics very frequently. I know that you've done a lot of work with real-time data in the transportation space. What are some ways that shippers can think about implementing more real-time data into their decision-making process?
Yeah, we always I think so the way to get real-time data is to use a modern technology connection, and using that legacy technology like the EDI or the rate bureaus is certainly not going to allow for that. The API is really what we see the most progressive carriers or the shippers out there using, and that allows the shippers to really optimize, and to your point, Rick, not necessarily make faster, but to be able to see what's happening in real time. With a lot of these legacy technologies, it's kind of like trading stocks with last month's newspaper. And so the information that you're getting doesn't really allow you to make decisions in real time, regardless of the system that you're using out there.
And Monica, your thoughts on using data to support decision making through the supply chain?
Yeah, with the increase of e-commerce, a lot of folks take their current network, their transportation history, and they'll do what ifs. Not just opening stores or where do they put stock, and being able to take a look at your network, where your inventory is located, what's happening from store pickup direct to the consumer. And you can see, I'm sure you've all been in a lot of the past presentations, the complexity of the supply chain just keeps increasing. But being able to do what if really gives you a good handle on, this is what I have today in my network, and it looks like, what if I do this? Or what if I do this? Or what if I do that? And understand the cost implications from a transportation standpoint. Yep. Is a terrific use of a TMS is really just a big data warehouse, right? And that really gives you a lot of different ways of looking at how you might move your inventory around, what you might do at your stores related to pickups, e-commerce, all of those different types of factors that you want to consider. And you have the data. So really being able to look at that, and you guys can see some of the complexities of a lot of the big companies and where they've put different points. But analyzing, your past on transportation moves can really help you look at your overall network so that you do get the density, you do look at where you're positioning based on delivering to your stores and where your potential fulfillment can be to your e-commerce business.
Let's talk a little bit about e-commerce. Maybe for Rick and Carol, can you talk about how e-commerce has impacted maybe your overall business and how you're adapting to it, both on the store level side, but also on the supply chain side as well?
Well, I know our e-commerce from our DC will not begin until July, but we have had store-to-store transfers, which has been really good because they'll go into the store and then hopefully the customer will buy something in like that. We've had that in place since January, so that's working out well. We have a large volume of it, but we're expecting a lot more when e-commerce really ramps up.
And when you say that
we're going to actually have a DC within a DC for the e-commerce. It will not be with our other product.
That's right. So that's what's going to happen in July is that you'll have a dedicated e-commerce DC within one of your DCs.
Yes.
Got it. Okay. And so right now, can somebody go online and order something, and it goes?
They can, but it's mostly it will be right now, it will be coming from a store. It will not be coming from our warehouse. Beginning in July, it will be coming from our warehouse.
And then are you able to reduce the inventory level at the store as a result of that, or is that, how does that?
Yes, they always can go in and see, how many we have on hand, or if there's another store that has it, and it to be shipped to that store.
Got it.
The customer can.
Thank you. Rick, thoughts on e-commerce?
Sure, we're over a 100-year-old company, but from an e-commerce standpoint, we're fairly young. Only 4 years ago, we started our online business. It's been growing exponentially, and currently all that fulfillment is done out of a central DC. So that has changed some of the inbound metrics. As we're optimizing inbound loads, we're seeing a huge growth in in the inbound to this DC, which is in the Atlanta area. So that's certainly giving us some more opportunities for West Coast DC bypass and things like that. But the other thing, this fall we're going to initiate our ship from store program, something that again we're later to the game on, but we hope to be a fast adopter now and get caught up to some of the rest of the folks in the room. I've been hearing talk about it for the last couple days. But that, again, is going to change dynamics and talk about, Monica mentioned a little bit, the outbound store optimization. That's something we really have to look at and how that's going to be managed. So it's going to be a whole new ballgame when we get to that level and start trying to adjust what should the inventory be at the store level to support that business model, which will maybe more than we have today.
Okay, interesting. And Monica, I know you brought up the topic, but what is your view on how shippers have adapted to e-commerce, through using TMS and opportunities that are out there, and kind of maybe where everybody, if in your mind, is at in that whole progression?
You know, the retail industry has been probably one of the most advanced in inbound automation over many of the other industries. So very well positioned to think about going from, you know, their vendors or suppliers to the consumer, to the store, to the warehouse. What I think's really progressed is folks really looking at the optimization of the inbound has been really fun, and I think done some things that other industries haven't really been able to pull off. And by doing that, it's really allowed them to, I think, advance quite well into the e-commerce world of really deciding where you're going to do that fulfillment. Kind of as Carol mentioned, you know, they started in doing some things in the stores, then they're progressing to inside of one of their DCs. You know, it gives you some flexibility if you've automated your inbound to maybe capture some things from your vendors. At the same time, all of this outbound stuff has certainly become smaller, faster, all of that. One of the key strategies that we thought about when we started Mercury, and by the way, back in 2000, was everything is smaller, everybody wants it faster. So we added in parcel native to our TMS in both the planning and execution, and it's become a really big bellwinner for us because no matter what the size is coming in from the supplier vendor or going out from our actual customers, is being able to handle through all the different modes in a centralized system. And it also helps the returns. If you think about it, most of the times returns tend to be smaller items, and maybe the inbound is a different type of mode. So from one system, a lot of our customers have been able to do some very creative inbound and outbound to really take advantage of how the consumer wants to buy.
And Jett, you mentioned earlier, you know, that some of the more, you know, technology-enabled companies, you know, that competing in the supply chain, the Amazons of the world, you know, how can maybe more traditional bricks and mortar retailers in your mind compete with, you know, the likes of Amazon, who have, you know, invested a lot in the systems and maybe, you know, not starting with a legacy bricks and mortar footprint, but, you know, more established, you know, more native to being an e-commerce player?
Yeah, it's a good question. It's interesting to see Amazon. I live in Chicago. See them open up some bricks and mortar locations there. So interesting trend to watch kind of unfold. But I think Amazon does one thing better than really anyone else out there, and you know they're always in the press and social media, really everywhere out there. And the one thing that they do better than anyone else, and it doesn't get a lot of coverage, it's really just about the customer experience. Their number one priority is customer experience. It's not lean, it's not Six Sigma, it's not cost reduction. Their entire supply chain's built around the customer experience. And when you look at the technology that they use, they kind of skipped a lot of that legacy technology and immediately moved to the automation, the APIs, the visibility, the optimization, the execution. And that's what allows that really amazing technology. What's great is that Amazon kind of paved the way, kind of blazed the trail for a lot of companies out there. So the cost for other e-commerce and shippers to come in behind is significantly less. And you can either build that technology out yourself or use a third-party vendor like Project 44 for something like that.
Good. I've got several more questions, but I think it's probably a good opportunity maybe to, you know, go to the audience and see what questions we've got in the room. And great, we've got one up front, and I'm going to stand up just so I can make sure I'm not favoring one half of the room or 2/3 of the room just to see everything.
Yes, thank you. Okay, so you'll have to forgive me. I'm a computer geek head. I'm in technology, and it's day 2 for me at this conference, and I came from Sacramento, California, still trying to figure out why my boss shipped me here. So what a dynamic industry. I'm IT, automation, retail, SME, if you will, and I've heard great things about where we're headed with this vertical, the industry. What are your challenges in IT? We talk about optimization. You talk about the need for higher visibility and seeing real-time data. What are your challenges when you're, looking at the customer experience or just in the supply chain in general with technology today?
Rick, do you want to start with that one?
Sure, I can start. I think probably our biggest challenge is just the effective use of all the data we have, and using I've heard again yesterday predictive analytics and things like that. We're just not even hardly scratching the surface of that, and I think that's certainly something that we have to get much more aggressive with to survive, and quite honestly, and I think that's probably the biggest. The other is just kind of coming to a conference like this really opens your eyes up to the myriad potential support vendors that are out there, and they're just everywhere and every day, and we probably get 50 emails a day from people that have this to offer or that to offer, and just trying to sort through them all is it's very difficult. Trying to find that right fit for a company, one or two that might really be able to help you and be a big winner. So those are a couple of things I'd say.
Carol, do you have anything you'd add on kind of the challenges and the things you're thinking about?
Well, as you said, I mean, it's very hard to choose a provider to know who can really match with what we already have. But I've heard some really good things at this conference and talked to some really knowledgeable people with this. And we have not really discussed about bringing on any more, but I can see if we're going to grow as we need to, then we're going to have some more with this, definitely.
Monica,
yeah. So just to give you an idea of the advancements in the technology that we've seen over the last 15 years is, I'm going to just talk transportation for now, is because of the how fast everything is and how real time, all of the types of partners and vendors and your customers and everybody has done such a great job on the enablement of their piece of the technology so that everything can be real time, even the railroads, okay? I mean, you can, when you see the advancement that people have done to be able to get real-time visibility, to be able to plan things, it's just incredible. Because if you have that information, you can do so much with it at the time. If you know, for example, that you have a shipment being delayed somewhere and there's a alternative way to get it there, and because there's so many incredible providers, not just the core, trucking companies, but all of these last mile types of networks. Just think about it. We take the world and we cross connect it. And we make such a beautiful network. We can do so much for taking empty miles out of the supply chain, having a much better impact on emissions. So there's tremendous amount of capabilities. The other thing too is a lot of the future things that are out there with drones, with driverless things. The drones to me are probably one of the most interesting because, and I'm not here to badmouth Prada because I have one, but it's really not that important that I get a Prada purse tomorrow, but it is important that we get food, medical supplies, and clothing to places that don't have roads, that don't have bridges. So to me, that's what a drone brings to the world and makes it a better place.
Jett, I'd like your thoughts on this too, but I'd also like, and Monica, you bring up an interesting point, can you just talk a little bit about how you see some maybe non-traditional companies, disrupting the supply chain and the transportation space and the likelihood of some of that happening? There's very well-established companies on the parcel side, on the carrier side. There's obviously a lot of innovation that's happening, a lot of capital that's coming in. So
Sure.
Just kind of thoughts on a couple of those things would be great.
Yep, absolutely. So to answer your question, one of the biggest challenges out there is folks that only look at the supply chain or transportation from the lens they've been looking at for the last couple of decades. And so that will really be what separates the winners and the losers. And we talk about analytics and the 4 different types of analytics that are possible when you look at, say, Gartner, who's a leading expert in talking about it. None of the predictive analytics, the machine learning, the AI, none of that is going to be possible with the legacy technology. So the companies that are continuing to go down that road will be out of business. And in 2 to 3 years, we will know already who the winners and the losers are. It may not be obvious to the analyst, or it may not be obvious to people outside of the industry, but from folks that are inside and understand technology, the companies that are not making the changes right now will be so far behind, it'll just be a slow death. They'll never be able to pivot their technology fast enough to be able to catch up. You know, it's interesting you talk about the new players out there, whether it's Postmates or it's Grubhub or it's Uber, Freight or Uber for package. There's a lot of these networks out there that leverage technology through some type of app, optimization. Here at Project 44, we can attach to any mode out there anywhere in the world. So it's, you know, we're in an interesting position where we kind of have a bet with every option out there, whether it's a drone or LTL or intermodal, and whoever uses us will be a winner because of that. But what's interesting also is like FedEx, who's, you know, someone you kind of almost alluded to, that an incumbent out there. FedEx is, in my opinion, probably, I wouldn't have had this opinion a year ago, but probably one of the most progressive carriers out there. They consider themselves an airline, of course, but and they created something called an automation program. So, and they created this automation program, and they have a team of people out there. And you guys kind of hit on this point. 4 people that do nothing at all at FedEx, but study technology startups, and specifically in the logistics and transportation. And they study these companies, and they see who's going to be the winner, who's going to be the loser, who can help out. We're really fortunate that they selected us, and we're the only company in the world that has access to their automation program. And so now they're going around and taking us their top 100 shippers, and they're saying, please use Project 44, because it creates so much efficiencies internally in FedEx that their network can be optimized, the cost can be lowered, the customer experience can be better, all things that the customers are asking for, but using the legacy technology is just not possible. So I hope that answers the question.
Yeah, no, so
Thanks.
there's not much we can add to that, I guess. What else from the room? Maybe just to another one that I'll put out there, I guess, then if we don't have anything else right now. You know, Rick and Carol, I mean, from the shipper side, a lot of talk about, you know, how things are evolving and how things are changing. Let's just start on a couple simple things. You know, how frequently do you do something like, you know, switch carriers, switch modes, you know, bid freight from a cost perspective, and then maybe a little bit more broadly, you know, the process to actually implement some of the change within your organization, you know, the speed to, you know, affect if it's something on the system side, something on the supply chain side. So very basically, you know, carrier mode selection, and then a little bit more bigger picture, and, you know, making some longer term decisions on the supply chain.
Go first.
Okay. So mode selection, bidding, you know, we normally do bids every other year, you know, and you know, LTL one year and truckload the next year, and we have a core carrier concept, so we're normally, you know, not making a whole lot of changes, but throughout the period, then we will also, you know, certainly entertain discussions with carrier partners, you know, about their offerings outside of the bid parameters or bid time frames. But as far as change, you know, the system allows us to change carriers, you know, very fast and efficiently. You know, we can download the rates and things into the system and in very short order, and doesn't take much effort at all from that standpoint. So mode, looking at, as I kind of mentioned in I think one of my initial comments, we're always looking at mode decisions almost on a daily basis, depending on on what's going on within our network. You know, we have a lot of peaks and valleys in our volume. You know, it surges the first week of the month and then it dies off, and then in June and July it's very quiet. August it ramps up for the peak season, fall season. So we have, during those down periods, you know, we'll change our optimization logic, you know, to try to drive more product, you know, more efficiently into our consolidation centers, because if we don't, then our release patterns from those facilities will be very light, and our end-to-end cycle time will increase. So we're always kind of looking at those type of you know, decisions, and again, between over the road and intermodal, you know, almost on a daily basis.
And then just longer term, I mean, when you think about if it's something like DC location or something like that, some of the structural things within the supply chain, is that more of a 5-year process, or, you know, part of the annual, you know, CapEx decision, or is it something that? Yeah,
well, we kind of, you know, look at the 3 to 5 year time frame for that, and, you know, but every year we're updating that based on our new growth projections, especially with the e-commerce growth. So, you know, we do network optimization to some extent almost yearly, almost annually. Sometimes it's more of, you know, just updating what we did last year. But you know, we're really lucky in that some of our facilities, when we moved into them 3-4 years ago, we, you know, had the foresight to, you know, take an extra 100 or 200,000 square feet in those facilities and sublease it for a while, and now we're just slowly expanding into that space as our business grows.
And, you know, Carol, from your standpoint, I mean, you know, decisions, you know, kind of on a short-term basis, and then, you know, it also sounds like you're a little bit more in growth mode where you're still adding, you know, physical retail locations, so that's going to be another, as you expand and you grow the supply chain, maybe you can kind of tie that into your answer as well.
Yes. Well, we only have one distribution center at this particular time, which is in Alabaster. And when you were talking about the bidding with the carriers, we found that there was a lot of frustration between the carriers and with us when we did bids for all the lanes, because our volume, it will spike, like Rick said, the first of the month, you know, it'll be low at the end of the month. And they were always, seemed like they were always expecting these full truckloads to come, I don't know, 10, 12 a month or something like that. And it didn't happen because of the way that they were looking at the data. And when we changed to the bid board, where we could put all that information out there, it saved us a lot of money with doing that without having to just stick with one carrier with this rate or whatever, or say, well, this is the one that we always use. And it gave us a lot of options. We will, right now we just started a consolidation center in California, which has helped us quite a bit because we have a lot of California vendors. And we use intermodal, which is much less expensive than the over the road for what we're doing, because they have to be dropped at the facility to be able to come when it's full. And that is working out really well for us. It's been cost savings so far, and then we don't have to worry about damages or lost LTL shipments or anything like that. So that's been very good on the OS&D side.
We had a question.
Yeah, we've got some questions over on the side.
Toss it. Oh, strike.
Question for Monica on the TMS side. So kind of what's next? Over the evolution of Mercury Gate, maybe what have been the most recent changes you've made to TMS or the customers have asked you to make, and then what are you working on now over the next few years, you know, to adapt to changing supply chains and different demands that people are having for what they need out of the service?
Yeah, it's a great question. So a lot of the some of the recent investments that we did was to really be able to put almost take the horizontal and vertical complexities of a transportation system and put it into a easy to use type of interface that really hid the complexities of transportation. So like, if you really peel back the onion, you guys know this, you know, there's There's multiple, multi-everything is what we call it. Multiple legs, multiple modes, multiple pools, multiple customers, multiple everything. So to be able to take the complexity out so that people coming into transportation could really follow knowledge, workflow, different types of things, easy to use. But what that does is it also transcends into very advanced capabilities being on every type of device. So whether it's a tablet or it's a phone. The other thing that's, you know, we kind of got lucky. When we started our TMS, it was web native to start. It was multi-tenant. It was a many-to-many architecture. So we haven't had to change the core architecture. What we've had to be able to do, though, is really get real-time data. And also one of the other things that we did in the last couple of years is we mainly worked just on the non-asset side. And then we decided that private fleet, dedicated operations, the asset side was very critical. So we added in, so drivers, trailers, power units, all of the different types of asset stuff could also be managed into a fully integrated system. Is another area that we spun out. And the other thing too is, like, the whole premise of what we built was that every company in the world could afford robust transportation management software. So the same thing is true on the asset side. So what we've tried to do is, because there's so much complexity in transport, and I can tell you, like, we do 8-week releases, and we've been doing it for 16 years, and you would think that, you know, by now we'd have built everything, right? The industry, if I look at the industry and the changes and being able to do that, it's actually phenomenal, though, because by having all of our customers on the same code base, it's really allowed all of them to change with the industry, and it's really allowed the type of connectivities in real time. So, for example, you know, we enable Project 44, we enable other types of technologies. What it does is it makes the networks just bigger and bigger. So this whole network and this whole enablement and connectivity, whether it's a private network, whether it's a public network, whatever it is, those open APIs are also very important. So that's another thing that we've tried to do is, instead of us being the decision maker on winners and losers, we decided that, you know, these APIs, anybody can connect to anybody. That's another very open concept. We're not going to be the only TMS in the world. At the same time, we need to be able to connect with whoever needs to, whether it's for loads or for capacity or for whatever types of things. Those are the types of advancements, so then you can take advantage of all types of technology today and in the future. Oh.
And then just a quick follow-up, also related back to what Jett was saying earlier on adoption. Are you seeing the bottleneck on the shipper side more or the carrier side more? If you're looking to get more data, better data, integrate with technology, are you seeing in general carriers being easier to work with or having the data ready, or shippers being more on that side?
Well, it's remember the shipper is typically the final arbitrator, right? So connecting to their ERP systems is really what the bottleneck is, or their WMSs or whatever, and they're motivated. So the connectivity of the network, it's related to the suppliers, it's related to all of the transport companies. The nice thing is, regardless of whether the person has real-time APIs or they have different mechanisms, remember that it's just as real-time to have a mobile phone with GPS tracking and be passive as it is to have interfaces from other systems. That data still has to get there. So, for example, take the ELD, all of the electronic logging. There's a tremendous amount of vendors in that space. What we've done is we've homogenized 5 of the top people into our workflows and stuff, and then publish the APIs out to the other hundreds of ELD providers. So the answer is it's more it's all of the people who are connecting with that particular shipper that are the ones who have to continue to enhance their technology. So if you want to access door-to-door intermodal rates, you've got to make sure that CSX, Streamline, and Modal X have the capability to give you that like that. So that's not on the shipper, right? That's not on the LSP. So it's really driven by all of the transport companies and their ability to be able to connect. And by the way, so you get this. Our software is used by over 200 LSPs. So we have to also serve those messages back out to our customer shippers. So we see both the in and the out of the support of messages. So, but it really starts, the end point has been the carriers or the transport companies.
Do we have time for one more, or should we? Last question. Was there one more? Yeah.
Sure. Thanks. Great panel. If we could boil down some of the work that you guys have both of the shippers have done, how much savings have you had through your optimization? You know, you both have done interesting things. How much savings on like a like-for-like basis have you seen in your transportation spend through some of the efforts that you guys have put in?
Well, this past year, I was charged to save 5% on our inbound freight, which would have been around $106,000. Some of the changes that we made, whether it's going to the bid board, more intermodal, we were able to save over $1 million on our inbound freight this year.
Rick, maybe if you want to comment,
Yeah,
then I think we need to.
Real quick. I've implemented TMSs twice at 2 different companies, and of course you get your big bang when you first implement it. You know, that's where you start optimizing. And both cases, I think I've seen the first year, you know, first full year, probably a 10 to 15% savings, you know, from implementing, and then you just kind of keep improving on that, on top of that. So by the time you're 2 or 3 years down the road, you're probably saving close to 20% against what your baseline was when you started. So, yeah.
Well, good. I think that we've hit the time window. I think that everybody on the panel is going to be floating around here this afternoon, so if there are additional questions, I'm sure they'd be happy, or wouldn't mind if you tracked them down. But thank you, everybody, for the great information, and thanks for the participation.